What's happening? Adam Drake here, and today I'm going to share a little bit of information about air filters. So we'll start off by talking a little bit about the air filters that I use and that I recommend. And those are the pre-oiled air filters from Flashpoint RC. ProTech RC also makes a really nice pre-oiled filter, and they also make a dry filter, or a filter that comes with no oil that you will need to oil. So super important, if you're using a foam filter, you should always use oil. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about the new dry air filters from Clinic RC. So a lot of these tips are tips that you should use with any type of filter you use. So it doesn't have to be a Mugen car or Flashpoint filter. These tips are going to just help make sure that your engine runs good, doesn't suck dirt. And we'll start with how I basically prepare and mount the filter. So what I have here is the Losi boot with the Flashpoint pre-oiled filter. Mugen also has a new S-bend filter and housing, and then Flashpoint makes a pre-oiled foam for that as well. But what I like to do is I actually super glue just with J-Concepts or Flashpoint glue. I'll super glue the housing to the rubber boot, and then I will also add a zip tie. So normally in any instructions it'll just show you to use a zip tie, but I like to take an extra precaution, glue the housing to the boot, then zip tie it, and then I will zip tie the boot to the carburetor. I also use basically a safety wire or a filter mount. This actually came, I believe, with an associated filter. I think they used to sell this when you used to buy their filter housings. Losi also makes one. The Losi one you kind of have to rebend if you want to use that on the Mugen car. But what happens, or the reason why I use this, is because while you're driving, you're going through bumps, you're landing big jumps, this filter's flopping around. It's bouncing off the body, it's bouncing off the linkage, and when it hits the linkage or when it hits things, the foam can either get like pushed or pulled back, or if you have like a dry style filter, it can actually get punctured. So by using this wire and then securing it with a body clip, it allows the filter to not move. It also will make the rubber boot last longer, because when this filter is bouncing around, that boot can sometimes get cut by the venturi, and it just puts more stress on the rubber boot. So those are a couple tips, and then the reasons why I use the Flashpoint filters. So we did a lot of testing, not only with the oil but also with the foam. You need to have a foam that has tight enough cells so it's not too open or porous, to where it has to be tight enough that it's able to stop any like kind of big pieces of dirt. But it needs to be open enough that it doesn't get clogged. So the balance between the foam that Flashpoint uses as well as the oil, it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It allows it to breathe but then not get clogged up. So sometimes if you use either a foam that has too tight of pores or too sticky of an oil, filter can get clogged up. That's really not going to hurt much. It's just going to change the tune of your engine. As that filter gets clogged, the engine's going to get rich. You're going to have to adjust the tune, but it will help keep dust and dirt out. But other than that, it's pretty simple. You want to make sure you change your filter often. I know sometimes guys, depending on the track conditions, they'll go, I put a new filter on every day. Well, sometimes that's not enough for most 8-scale tracks. Some tracks are really dusty and you may need to go through multiple filters each day. I don't recommend ever cleaning the filters and re-oiling them, because a lot of times you'll actually wash the dust deeper into the filter. You'll re-oil it, and then that dirt will still get pulled through into the engine. Super important. You never want to get dirt in the engine. You want to keep the engine as clean as possible. Otherwise, any of that dirt that gets in there, if it does, it's basically like sandpaper running through the engine. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the dry air filters. This has kind of been like the latest craze, something new, which is always really, really cool. So I did a fair bit of testing with the Clinic filter. You can tell here this one's actually very old and is basically ready to be thrown out. Now, with the dry filter, just like with any pre-oiled filter, there's things you need to look for and precautions that you need to take. Again, if the filter's bouncing around, gets punctured, it's going to allow dirt through. More so, though, with the dry synthetic. I'm calling it a paper filter, but I believe it's actually a synthetic material. Now, when I did my initial testing with this filter, it was at Thunder Alley. Rhonda and I both ran a number of days. After each day, we would blow the filter out, check the engine, make sure that there was no dust or dirt in the boot or in the venturi. The filter seemed to work and perform really well. It didn't really give me any advantage over the oiled filter other than I didn't have to change my filter multiple times throughout the day. The one thing that was kind of strange to me, though, is I don't know when kind of its time is up. When is enough enough? When is it time to actually ditch the filter and put on a new one? Well, I think that's really going to depend on the track conditions. And as you notice, like if you blow the filter out and the engine still doesn't seem to be breathing well, then it's time to throw it out, put on a new one. That's one of the things that I like with the pre-oiled filter. Yes, you have to change it more often, but there's no guessing when it's when is it time to change it. So the other thing with the paper filter or synthetic filter, you have to be a little bit more careful to make sure it doesn't hit the linkage or there's nothing that gets punctured, because if it does, you won't really see it until it's too late. Then it's time to send your engine in for service or have it rebuilt, and we never want to see that happen. We want to make sure that you're able to keep your engine clean and running well. So if you do choose to use the dry filter, definitely use a wire mount. Make sure you glue the boot and zip tie it to the housing, just like I do with the oiled filter. Like with anything, you can have really good luck or you can have problems if you don't use it properly. So just make sure you take those steps. But for me, I'm super confident, and I've used for many, many years and had really, really good luck with the Losi boot, with the Flashpoint pre-oiled filters, and also the new Mugen MBX8R rubber boot with the Flashpoint pre-oiled filters.